You might have a better shot than I do. Seems to be weaving back and forth, but both hands possibly on the steering wheel. We can't tell if there's somebody in the passenger seat. Speeds as high as 75, 77 miles an hour there, and content to stay in the right lane. The traffic isn't too bad, but it will come up on some pretty slow traffic at the 710, and then if it continues westbound, we'll have some very heavy traffic at the end of the freeway, the 91, around the 110. But it's a little calmer here, even though we're seeing high speeds in the carpool lane. Although, boy, look at that. That's not at all. When you start driving erratically like that, it's just extremely dangerous for everyone.
Well, plus, Scott, this person, as we've seen chases before, this person doesn't seem to have real good control of the vehicle. When you watch him switching lanes, there's sudden jerking motions. The car rocks back and forth. I thought for a moment there when he switched across those 4 lanes, 5 lanes of traffic, he was going to lose control at that point. That's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. He's not a good driver at these speeds, so to speak.
Well, you got to wonder about drugs and alcohol when you see something like this. When you see the swerving of the vehicle, certainly he or she, I couldn't tell for sure. Maybe you could, but this individual does not have good control of the vehicle. Exactly why, it's hard to tell. But a lot of times when we see that, it is drugs or alcohol related. And then when you get to the point where they're desperate, and this individual is obviously desperate, it's just frightening. I mean, it's absolutely frightening. I believe the vehicle just took the transition from the 91 freeway westbound, getting on the 710 freeway northbound. The 710 north will get extremely crowded up a little further north around the 105. That's the usual pattern. And then it comes to a stop if he continues on the 710 all the way up to the 5 freeway in the Commerce area. It wouldn't surprise me right now, though, with what we've seen in the past, that there'll be a pattern. It might get onto the 105 freeway off the 710 and then head back into that area in the Norwalk Downey area where he is back on the surface street. So we'll have to see, but at least for the moment it has calmed down a little bit compared to what we saw on the surface streets. But like I mentioned, it's frightening, 79 miles an hour, pursued by Long Beach police with an air unit overhead. And at this point in time, the pit maneuver certainly is not an option, and we just hope we get away with no one getting hurt. This individual may be on the phone with somebody who could talk some sense into him and get him to just give up peacefully before anybody is hurt or maybe even killed, because this pursuit there at 90 miles an hour certainly has the potential for that.
Oh, boy. And where did this originate, Scott?
It originated in Long Beach. It's Long Beach Police, for the most part, that is still the agency in control of this pursuit, although they're going to come into a lot of other areas where LA County Sheriff's is going to assist them because it's their area as well. But look at that, across several lanes on the 710 freeway northbound, coming back up on Rosecrans, and then it'll be the 710 freeway, the 105 freeway interchange off of the 710. We don't know exactly why this individual was lit up and tried to pull over. They tried to pull him over in Long Beach, but it's Long Beach Police. We had it originally northbound on Lakewood Boulevard coming out of Long Beach, and I believe this may be the transition road right now to the 105 freeway east or westbound, and I think he has to make a decision there which one, and it looks like it's going to be possibly the 105 freeway westbound. No, it's the eastbound side, I believe. So this is headed back into that area. We see this so many times with pursuits, that the individual heads back into areas where he's been off the freeway in certain cities. Maybe he knows the surroundings, or she does. It's really hard to anticipate that at this point. It's just speculation. But once again, it gets off the freeway, it gets really dicey.
And again, Scott, you pointed out there are 2 people in the vehicle. Unknown for sure if this is a male driver, but we would agree with you from our perspective when we looked in the driver's side window, it did look like a man. Now you see him crossing over the double yellow, but this particular driver, 92 miles an hour, thanks to Sky Map 7 that we can see the speeds there. This person has been reckless, and that is abundantly reckless is probably how we should describe this. This person is really desperate to try to elude authorities.
Well, it's a recipe for disaster. There's no question about this. This is extremely dangerous. I have a loved one who travels the 105 freeway. It's been on the 605, the 710, the 91 in this area. You might want to try and get a hold of them if you can and let them know that this is going on, because you don't want to be in the way of this vehicle. I mean, if this guy swerves and hit a car at 90 miles an hour, he'll flip over. He could take up several other cars. It comes up now, we believe that this vehicle is stolen out of Long Beach. And sometimes we watch these pursuits and we look into the strategy of officers. And at this point in time, they have not backed off. They are right now staying behind the vehicle, 90 miles an hour time, times onto the freeway. But once again, a recipe for disaster when you're traveling at this high rates of speeds. You have somebody that does not really appear to have complete control of the vehicle, and when it got off the freeway, when the pursuit was off the freeway, it appeared there really wasn't much interest in protecting his life or the lives of others by going through intersections where there were red lights or just going 60, 70 miles an hour, even through a green. There are so many other things that can happen with the cars pulling in front of you. And we've seen a lot of this, an immediate right turn to get onto an off-ramp. Oh, boy. You know, indecision is going to kill somebody. When this individual has indecision and doesn't know if he's getting off or on, that's when somebody's going to die. That's when the crashes will be horrible because they happen at an extremely high rate of speed. You know, at 80 miles an hour, trying to decide if you're going to get off the freeway or stay on. And then if you do that at the last moment, unfortunately, I think that's really what's going to be pose the biggest danger in a situation like this. So really, we hope this individual comes to his senses. Stolen vehicle out of Long Beach is about all we have right now on the driver. We believe 2. That was a report from the police department, but we haven't been able to really confirm that.
And you can see the traffic sort of stopping, having congestion there. He is going 86. Now he's slowing down just a bit, but it's gotten as high as 91 miles per hour. Just an awful situation. We can see him through the driver's window, kind of bobbing back and forth. You see that, and no telling what the passenger is thinking or doing at this point. But police are hot on his tail. This beginning in Long Beach with a stolen car. So that's what we believe. This is a stolen car suspect and driving extremely erratically, extremely dangerous.
Right here.
And what'd you
Coming
say,
up
Scott?
on the end of the freeway. Well, it's a 105 West, and it ends once you cross the 605 onto Studebaker. Now, we've been in this area once before. It's a pretty typical MO of a lot of vehicles that are being pursued. You can see how tight Long Beach Police is behind him. If he slows a bit through an intersection or makes a right turn or a left turn, there is a possibility they would move on to this vehicle and try and do the pit. Even though it's a little higher speeds than what we've seen, you know, sometimes you just have to have a strategy and you just have to take a chance if you believe it's safe, because we've seen this individual almost crash into so many cars. Now, we didn't follow from the beginning. He could have hit a couple of vehicles. We're not aware of that we haven't been told that, but we've seen it. Him come so close, or this individual comes so close. So I believe that if the car would slow enough and make a turn one way or the other, they may decide to try and do the pit. Even though it may be some momentum in the vehicle, it may flip over. It may be worth that type of risk to stop this individual from, you know, hitting or killing someone else. Because, you know, driving like this more than likely is not going to end well.
And this is Studebaker at this point, I think, is what I saw.
Is that Cerritos?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Studebaker is southbound in the Norwalk area.
Well, and
off
the
the
thing
105.
is, he's not changed his behavior in a conservative direction at all throughout this chase. So we've watched this person on the 710, the 91, the 105, reached 90-plus on Rosecrans at one point, which certainly is a very heavily trafficked street in Norwalk. That's when that was happening. Now he's on Studebaker, which the surroundings look familiar, and certainly his actions going through these intersections, again, Scott, remains consistent. Going through these intersections, you see on the video on the right one of the near misses that we had, but he's got no problem going through intersections with very marginal slowing.
Yeah, there's an opportunity possibly. You see how close the vehicle, the patrol car, got to the car?
Yeah.
If you could have got right up on him, that could have been a spot where a pit may have been possible. It's still pretty high speeds. But, yeah, we're seeing no relaxed driving from this individual. He's driving erratically. It appears, you know, from what we've seen, with the indecision, with the swerving, that possibly drugs or alcohol are an effect here on Alondra. And if you remember, we were on Alondra before.
Man,
there we go.
Oh,
that was a motorcycle right there.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, the motorcyclist probably would have been killed at those speeds if he would have been hit. And that's, you know, and police recognize this. So supervisors on this, I don't know if it's one of those situations where maybe they'll back off, and they'll see if when they back off and go to surveillance mode that the individual will slow down and stop driving erratically like this, or at least at these high rates of speed. It's unclear, but with Long Beach police right at this point in time, they have not taken that perspective, from what we can tell, they're staying right on him, even though the air unit overhead really is going to keep him in sight no matter where he heads. But the driving it's frightening. There's no question about that.
He has gone through so many intersections with near misses with cars. I can't imagine that this can last much longer without a crash happening.
Well,
no, it's a miracle we haven't seen one already.
Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed when they tried to do the pit maneuver, it seemed like they were going to make an effort, but because he's going 60 miles an hour, and that is because he's going so fast through the intersections, it's difficult for police to close that gap because I mean, you're talking about trying to go from 65 to 75 to do a pit, as opposed to when he's making a turn at a 35-mile-an-hour rate. Maybe they can close that gap easier. But he's making it difficult for police to take matters into their hands. They're just kind of having to keep people as safe as they can.
I believe you're exactly right, because, the officer behind this suspect, it's all about the cushion, right? I mean, he doesn't want to be right on him doing 71, 75 miles an hour, close enough to do a pit maneuver when he slows down to 30. So there is that reaction time, but also I don't think he wants to be so close when the vehicle's doing at one point 90 miles an hour on the surface street. So it makes it more difficult. The only thing that does help is if the individual develops a pattern.
Well,
there we go into an intersection, swerving out of control there a little bit, and then getting back on. Maybe you guys can read that. I can't pick it up yet, but we're headed northbound, back on Lakewood Boulevard. As I mentioned, if the suspect develops a pattern, then you can start to get officers in position in intersections to throw out the spike strips. And once a spike strip is out, then we really slow the speeds down, because a vehicle traveling with flat tires will not be able to control that car much over 35, 40 miles an hour, especially if the front tires are out. So that's a strategy when the individual stays in the same place and develops a pattern. And we have seen that now. We've been on Lakewood Boulevard several times. Came out of Long Beach on Lakewood.
Okay.
They're swerving through another intersection there, and almost hit that Mini Cooper. But we may see that pretty soon here if he stays on Lakewood Boulevard, a possible spike strip.
Thank God we haven't seen pedestrians on the street. We have not seen that.
Which is reasonable to think that it might happen.
40 minutes from now,
and we also don't know if the suspect is physically armed. I mean, he's treating his car as a weapon, but we also don't know what is inside that vehicle with these two people. Again, two people in there, and you have to take into our thought process the frame of mind of both of those people, because we don't know for sure what has gone on. We think this was a stolen vehicle,
car, but don't know if it was a carjacking.
We don't know how this began.
Makes it difficult. I mean, it's so dynamic. It could be so many things until police find out more exactly what's going on. The passenger could be saying, hey, stop. They may be frightened and telling the driver to stop, but that doesn't mean that individual is. Obviously, at this point, we haven't seen any of that. We haven't seen any indication that this individual wants to give himself up or is even willing to slow down when it comes into a situation where he may hurt himself. We're still on Lakewood Boulevard, I believe. We're traveling northbound. We're coming back up on the 105, and there's a quick turn to the left. I tell you, it's going to be those indecisions. It's going to be those quick turns at high rates of speed that ends up hurting or killing someone. Those
last-minute decisions. And you were watching Eyewitness News at 6:30 in the morning, along with Philip Palmer and Leslie Sykes. Scott Reif overhead. And this, as you can see, is a high-speed chase that right now is in, is it in Norwalk or Cerritos at this point, Imperial Highway?
Downey on Imperial.
Downey. This is in Downey. And this suspect has gone at high rates of speed on surface streets on the freeway, 91, the 710, the 105, the 605. And now, as you can see, he is on Imperial Highway. And as far as we can see, he has not hit anyone yet, but this is extremely dangerous with these extreme high rates of speed and erratic driving. Two suspects inside the car. This is a stolen car. We haven't gotten a glimpse of the passenger yet, but Long Beach police are in pursuit. They have not attempted a pit maneuver at this point. not made any attempts to really stop him. He's going into an intersection, making a left-hand turn. He's had several near misses, but no crashes that we have seen on the air. But this is, in recent memory, one of the most dangerous pursuits that we have seen.
And what you just said is striking, and we'll bring Scott back in, but it is striking to me, Scott, that this person has been able to avoid collisions as far as what we've seen from since we picked it up, because he has driven through these intersections with such disregard of everyone else. And you see video there on your right of what we're talking about. Scott, I mean, he hasn't even hit a parked car or anything at this point.
Yeah, there doesn't appear to be damage to the vehicle. We didn't pick it up right at the beginning, but not far after it started, and it's been very, very close. In several incidences, it came within, it seems like, inches of hitting a vehicle or maybe swerving out of control and flipping over. We are southbound now on Paramount Boulevard, coming back up onto the 105 freeway in the Downey, Southgate area, and Paramount. All these little cities sort of overlap through here. It's Long Beach police that are in control of, or the authority here so far, on this stolen vehicle out of Long Beach. But certainly it's been fortunate for everyone that this individual has not hit anybody, because at these rates of speeds, it's certainly it's been several close calls. And as we get later on in the morning, I mean, we look at more traffic on the surface streets. We look at families that are starting to get their kids to school. And, boy, I tell you, it's just frightening. I mean, I've seen this so many times where an innocent individual has been killed by someone who's just trying to get away from police. And then here's a stop, and, boy, look at that. Look at the rate of speed past that vehicle. Very close, swerving through there just for a moment. And, you know, 1 foot to one side or the other, and that would have been a high-speed collision. But you start to wonder what the suspect is thinking about, and that's when you start to consider the fact, in a lot of these cases, it's drugs or alcohol that are involved. But there's no chance they're going to get away. They must know it's a matter of time before they're actually taken into custody, or they're hurt, or they hurt someone else. I mean, it's obviously they have to know that. Now, here's a left turn into an alleyway or into a small street. We haven't seen much of this. It's a possibility this individual knows this area. The speeds are a little slower. This is an area where a pit maneuver may be possible, and it's also an area where police can now sort of swarm down into this area with more units and maybe put out a spike strip.
Did you see running through that stop sign? He's also hitting these speed bumps right in front of him at fairly high rate of speed there, if you notice, and that could potentially cause him to lose control as well.
And maybe if we're lucky, it'll damage the vehicle and he won't be able to continue to go. You know, some of those, you hit a bump, a big speed bump at a high enough rate of speed, that will happen. I was hoping it was going to get into an area where they could do the pit maneuver successfully. And now we're back on Downey. So there is definitely a pattern in this area of Paramount, Downey, Norwalk. We've been on Downey a couple of times. We've been on Lakewood Boulevard. We've been on Studebaker. We've been on the freeway surrounding here. And now you start to see more patrol cars in the intersections. So as it develops a pattern, it certainly helps police because they can get into position and they can try and end this safely.
I'm also noticing some cars are pulling off to the side of the road more frequently. There's a red car that almost was hit. But are you noticing that too, Scott, with this pattern, whether authorities are ahead of it or alerting them or whatever? I have noticed some people start to yield. Oh, here we go, right into oncoming traffic.
Yeah, boy, could you imagine a head-on collision at 70 miles an hour? It would probably kill everyone in both cars if the other vehicle was doing the speed limit to posted around 40 in this area. It just gives you an idea how frightening it is. I mean, it makes you take a deep breath when you really start to think about it and you see it. Now, he's slowing a bit here, coming up on, just went over the 105 freeway, and then speeding up once again on Downey. I was hoping he'd get onto one of these little surface streets where they could really get behind him when he slowed down and then do the pit maneuver, and this would be over before anybody got hurt. But we haven't been on this street yet, and it looks like we're headed back paralleling the 105 freeway and headed back to the east.
It's on Gardendale now.
Yeah, you see the LA County ship there.
So it's not like the resources are there, and like you said, Scott, it's not as if this person's going to get away because they have it. They're following him from the air, and also right behind him. And again, as we've mentioned, you're starting to see more officers in front of the person. But Gardendale is not necessarily an area that we have seen this person so far.
Yeah, it's an area, you know, it's a city that he's been in, and he stayed in this 3 or 4 cities in this area, but we haven't seen him on this street. You know, the policy with different departments is interesting when you follow these pursuits. A lot of times, you know, you'll see the officers back off. They have the air unit overhead. They'll go into surveillance mode, and at least to see what the demeanor of the driver is when they back off. When he looks in his rearview mirror, or her, we don't know for certain, and they don't see any patrol cars if the vehicle slows down. In a lot of cases, when they do that, that will diminish the danger to the public, but we just haven't seen them do that at this point in time. Long Beach Police, I believe, is still the authority here. They do have an air unit overhead, so it's nearly impossible for this individual to get away. I mean, no matter, especially in this area right now, law enforcement, all the different agencies have been informed. They're in the intersections. They have a lot more patrol cars here than they would normally, and you know, the individual is going to get caught. At this point in time, we're just looking at the safest way for this to end. And if we pull out for a moment, Jamie, give me a shot and let's see how far behind this vehicle the patrol car is. He's still right on his tail for the most part. We haven't seen that strategy, but we may. They may at some point in time say, hey, we're getting into an hour where there will be children walking to school. There'll be a lot more people out on our surface streets, and we may want to go into surveillance mode, but we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, that may start in about 20 minutes. You would think 7 o'clock. He is going right through these intersections, and fortunately, these cars are not coming the opposite way, but he doesn't even slow down at all and try to see if he's going to hit anybody. I mean, he just has reckless disregard in this area. He's been going.
This is interesting here. We may be coming into an area where it'll be difficult for him to get away.
It's going to end right here. Gate.
Boy, this is dangerous. This could end badly if he tries to ram his vehicle at police, because that would be a threat to officers, and they probably would open fire.
Yeah,
and this is just dicey. We want to be careful here, Jamie. We want to make sure. Oh boy, please don't do that. We do not want the individual doing that.
He might go on the side.
Oh boy, he's been able to find a way around this. Possibly. Officers have been
gunfire.
Or there's smoke for sure.
Yeah, there's smoke. There's gunfire.
Oh boy, you know, that's why we're not in tight, folks, because you know, boy, this is just heart-wrenching. I mean, don't know why the individual's fleeing from police, but
well, and we also don't know if shots were fired from that car either. We're just seeing the puffs of smoke that appeared as if there were gunfire.
Yes.
But again, when he turned that car around and came at officers like that, that is a weapon, and all of those officers there were at risk. They're backing off now a little bit to the right of your screen, if you can see that, Scott.
Yeah, no, I see that. I don't have as good a picture as you do because our monitor's so small up here in the glare, but I couldn't tell if officer fired or if shots were fired from the vehicle. Personally, I didn't see the smoke, but I do know that officers have to protect themselves, and if that vehicle comes at them and it looks like they're going to try and run down the officer, they are going to fire. Mm-hmm. And I would doubt they'd have, you know, use less than lethal in a situation like that. That's when they're going to try and make sure that they get rid of the threat. We had to pull out, folks, because we just don't want to show anything like that tight. If you were just wondering while you're watching. Right now it's static. It's static in as much as the vehicle has stopped. I don't know if it's because the driver can't continue.
Scott, we can see officers waving to each other. Here's one thing to observe about what we're talking about as well. It looks as if from this shot, Scott, that there is nothing in the line of fire beyond the vehicle if shots were fired. As I'm looking at the back passenger window, that looks to be broken out. I don't know. Again, we are assuming shots were fired because it looked as if there were puffs of smoke that had happened as that car came at officers. That back passenger window does look to be broken.
But the front one as well.
Yeah, you see the officers training their weapons.
You're absolutely right, and it looks like the individual could have continued around that curb and continued on if shots weren't fired and the driver wasn't disabled. So, and I did hear from the booth just moments ago, at a better angle than me, that shots were fired. I believe they said by police for certain. So it looks like they just had to take the action necessary to stop this individual from running down officers, because I believe there was an officer on the other side of that patrol car with the door open, using that for protection, and then the vehicle went at the patrol car, and more than likely that's when the shots had to be fired. You know, we don't want to push in and confirm that the driver has been struck by gunfire. I mean, it's just a tough situation when you cover these things on what you do want to show and what you don't want to show, and so we we ask for some guidance from the studio for that. But for now, this is about as much as we're willing to really show. But you can see the windows have been shot out. Officers felt that they had to fire on the vehicle. It appears at this point in time we are in the Norwalk area, I believe. We'll bring up the sky map. It's helped so much to give us exact locations. We're on Foster Road in Bellflower. This is very close to the 105 freeway. And it's come to a stop. It's no longer a danger to other people. We saw that so much. We knew this wasn't going to end well as far as the speeds and how close it was to hitting other vehicles. It almost hit a motorcyclist, and I think if it would have hit that individual, he or she would have been killed. And now here we are with that vehicle. I don't know, it's better for you guys. You can roll some tape. I can't see the tape from up here, but when the vehicle did turn around, it got boxed in into this gate here. It looks like a self-storage area. Turned the vehicle around and did not hesitate to go right at police, even though they were out with their guns drawn. It appears at this point in time they had to open fire, and from what I can tell, it appears that more than likely the driver was struck.
Well, Scott, here's what we're going to do. You were just describing it. We're going to roll video of the end of this pursuit. Also, during that moment, you can check on the condition of the person in the vehicle. But this is what Scott was talking about. The person made this turn and did not realize he was pulling into a gated area. Officers blocked him in. And here's when it got very tense, because this person clearly was not going to stop. You can see him back up. Okay, there we are. All right, so there was a person who has survived. So now we're looking live here at the person surrendering. You see the glass on the ground next to it.
Doesn't look like that person has been shot.
But we don't know about the passenger.
Exactly, but you don't see any blood here with this person. That person...
So Scott, what did you see? Did he climb out of the window? How did this person get out of the vehicle while we were looking at video?
All of a sudden, he just climbed out of the window there. Now, originally I thought, I don't know if that's a driver or if that could have been the passenger. It would have been very difficult, though, for the passenger to go over the driver. Can we go in a little tighter, Jamie? I know if we're all the way in with our extreme vision. And what we can do is see if we see another person in there. They said 2 people. They thought 2 people. That was never confirmed. But you can see this individual is obeying officers at this point in time and slowly sliding on his stomach towards officers so they can make sure that he's not armed and they can take him into custody. And then they can also make certain that there's no one else inside the vehicle that could be armed and endanger police by firing on them. So it looks like this individual will be taken into custody. If there were 2, if we go back into that vehicle, we have a little glare with the way the sun is coming in, but we can try and tell. Maybe you can see. Maybe there was only 1 person inside that vehicle. I don't see another person. Maybe there was only the driver and not 2. But, boy, look at the windows all shot out. And let's go back to the suspect, see if we can find that individual. He's been taken into custody, and it didn't look like that individual had been shot. Now, officers are bringing up a shield here, and they may use that shield for cover as they move towards the vehicle. Let's go back to the vehicle, if we would, Jamie, just because they're giving it so much attention. Guns are still drawn, so they must believe that someone else is still inside the vehicle at this point in time because they're giving a lot of attention to the car. It's just difficult for us to tell if there's another individual in there.
Well, they can also talk to the person in custody. And it is,
if he will tell them
person
anything.
Needs to, generally speaking, will be asked, is there anyone in there or not? And, then they move accordingly. So, but they're not going to just trust this person. Clearly, there's still a risk, even if there's someone in there, just because this person might say, no, I was by myself. There have been cases in the past where that person is uncooperative and officers subsequently got hurt as they tried to clear a vehicle. So, obviously they'll want to be cautious, but if he told them there's somebody in the car, they have to treat that with that information as well. But he is in custody. It's certainly his attitude likely changed the moment those shots were fired, because he suddenly became compliant with everything the officers were saying, as you can see in the video, anything but when he was behind the wheel of the car.
And you see it right on the right side. You can see the puffs of smoke coming up from the vehicle. That's when they fired those shots. He could have ducked down, but it's incredible that he wasn't hit by any of those gunshots, it appears. So they are still having their weapons trained on the vehicle, trying to determine if someone else is inside. They must believe that someone is inside the vehicle.
Maybe they're in the back seat. Scott, when you pushed in very closely, we did not see anything in the front seat. Again, that doesn't mean the car is empty, but we haven't seen anything yet. But they're certainly giving it attention still.
Absolutely. It seems like usually in a situation like this, they take one person into custody. If they didn't believe somebody else was inside that vehicle, they would be moving up to clear the car by now. They usually do that fairly quickly. Now, they're moving forward behind the shield. You can see all the officers, guns drawn. It's quite remarkable that that individual got out of that vehicle without being shot or killed. We didn't see that he was wounded. It appeared to be a man. And now as they come closer, it looks like they're going to be able to clear this vehicle fairly quickly. But, you know, we look at what happened here in totality, and I can tell you it's fortunate that nobody was struck and killed by that car, and then to watch that individual get out of the vehicle without being struck by all that gunfire, and now we're looking to see if there might have been another person. And
well, you see the gloves that they're wearing, Scott, so it appears as if there's a person that has been injured because they're all wearing gloves to possibly take care of it. There's a hand, I see. Yeah, that could, so the driver is, we need to pull back out if we can.
Pull back out a little bit.
We'll pull back out on that. So it does appear as if the passenger somehow crawled across the driver, and they're having to clear. Now, he had his foot on the brake.
Yeah, the vehicle is rolling. The vehicle was still running, obviously, or it's a little downhill. Yeah, it was remarkable when we first looked at that no one was hit by gunfire. Obviously, they only hit the driver, and several shots were fired. It looks like the driver was struck and more than likely killed with as many shots as we see that were fired. And then it sort of startled us that we saw, that's the first time I've seen that an individual would crawl out of a window on a closed door over top of someone who's already been shot. But more than likely, that's what police told him to do, because they didn't want him going out the other side and then possibly making a run for it. They can see everything the suspect was doing. We think the passenger, when that individual climbed over the driver, who was shot, and we were in a little tight there as they first went in, it appears that he was shot and killed.
And it appears as if the officers are conducting CPR on that individual, so it's not clear if that person, as you can see right there, it's not clear if that person is dead or not, but they are trying to revive and wait for paramedics to get there. But that was the driver that we saw all along.
And as if you just might be joining us at 6:51, just to kind of reset what all happened here, this started as a police pursuit. Stolen vehicle in Long Beach was driving on any number of freeways, 710, 91, 105, but the most troubling elements of this chase were on the surface streets, 90-plus miles an hour in Rosecrans. The driver nearly hitting a number of vehicles, blowing through intersections, complete disregard for any kind of traffic signals or stop signs. We saw him blowing through stop signs over speed bumps at a high rate of speed in this Honda sedan. We had reports of two people in the vehicle. As you look video there on the right, we had reports of, that's when he nearly hit the motorcycle. But we had reports of two people in the car, but we never saw that second person. So then towards the end of this chase, as you see on the left there, paramedics arriving. The person in Bellflower got stuck behind that gated fence, and then this is when you knew it was going to go bad, because the person didn't just continue to back up. He turned around, and it looked as if he was going to ram the officers who were there. That's when shots were fired. The vehicle stopped, but was continuing to run. We couldn't tell that because we couldn't tell that closely, but that's when the shots were fired. And that's when that second person got out of the vehicle under command of authority. He got out, totally compliant, crawled across the ground and was arrested. But then just a short time ago, we saw officers pull the person out of the driver's side and began to administer medical care to him.
And what a way to have it end. And one person appears to be severely injured, and that is the driver. But it's just amazing that we have not heard of any other people being hurt when he was blowing through these intersections, going 70 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour on the freeway, 70 miles an hour on surface streets, and no injuries, not hitting any cars. That is amazing. And you can see right there, that's just one of many near misses that occurred in this pursuit, which had such high rates of speed, and it was so, the driver was driving so erratically. We haven't seen that in such a long time.
Well, there was that one moment where he almost hit the motorcycle, which was, you realized how desperately this person wanted to get away. Watch this. The motorcycle just turning with the arrow. and somehow that person missed him. And so then the chase continued. But again, 90 miles an hour on Rosecrans with pre-rush hour traffic. But Scott, this was something else, and you even said it. You didn't think that this thing was going to end as we see some of these slow speed chases end.
Yeah, no, it didn't end well, and we just got some new information that during the pursuit a gun was thrown out. And so we mentioned during the pursuit that they did not go to surveillance mode, and that might have been one of the reasons they were not going to let out on this individual, because now we understand from the L.A. County Sheriff's helicopter that's been overhead that they believe a gun was thrown out of the vehicle sometime during the pursuit. So I think that really changed, or it influenced the demeanor of how they covered this pursuit, how they chased this vehicle.
Well, that would be one gun thrown out. We don't know if there was another gun still in the vehicle.
Absolutely. All right, as we continue to watch this, let's go on over to Alicia Del Valle and get a quick check of traffic. Alicia.
Yeah, trying to get you around the bigger trouble spots. A motorcycle crash is blocking lanes on the 10 westbound at Normandy. Another traffic alert on the 170 at Sherman Way. If we go to Waze, I can show you another alert on the 405. If you take the 405 southbound, there's a crash blocking lanes at Victory. And I'm going to leave you with a quick peek at the 101 with our Caltrans camera. It's slow and go, but fender benders have been cleared near Balboa. Let's check in with